Okay, what specifically in the last 2 or 3 years have you done to, in the community, to build your democratic values, and how have you participated to share a democratic vision or make the Democratic Party stronger?
Sure. Well, for me, the past 2 or 3 years, I have been extremely involved in the Democratic Party, both in Davis and then in the county and even at the state level. So for the past 7 years, I've worked in the state capitol, which is not exactly the party level per se, it's the policy level. But I've worked for a number of very progressive state legislators who have all been very, very liberal Democrats. Lonnie Hancock, Wes Chesbrough, Mark DeSaulnier, and now my current boss, Rich Gordon. I didn't work for any of those folks by accident. I mean, I chose to work for them because my beliefs were very much in line with theirs. And they all have very long histories of being very progressive in their belief systems and the policies that they promote. So I spent a lot of time working in the Capitol on some of these policy issues, and about probably 3 or 4 years ago now, I had worked on a bunch of campaigns, sort of state assembly campaigns and others, and about 3 or 4 years ago, I decided, well, I've learned a lot of stuff working in the Capitol, but I'd actually really like to see how the party functions at the local level. And so I actually ran for the county's Democratic Central Committee and won a seat, and have been very involved in the past 2 years in the committee, including up until even a month ago when I was treasurer of the Central Committee, but stepped aside as I was running for city council. I think that we're in a very unique position in California. Currently in 2012, we are a very blue state. We're continuing to get bluer. The Republicans are increasingly getting smaller and smaller and becoming more and more dysfunctional, both here in the state of California and then across the country. Even 2 years ago, in 2010, when there was a sort of quote-unquote red tide, that swept across the country, it's well been documented that red tide stopped at the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and California held back that red tide. We were the only state in the country where we actually picked up Democratic seats. I mean, which is just phenomenal, considering the climate that we had 2 years ago. So I think it's imperative here in California that we continue to make the Democratic Party as strong as it can be. It is strong. We are the most dynamic place in the world, and the things that we do here in California have a ripple effect across the world. I mean, across the nation and across the world. So I think it's a lot of that stems from, frankly, democratic values and democratic politics. And so that is absolutely the key for me, is to make sure that and that all starts locally, keeping it strong at the local level, and it permeates to the county level, to the state level, and up to the national level. So.
Lucas, why should people vote for you?
Well, I think I bring the right mix of common sense and actual real-world experience, both in, as I said, my years of commitment and service to the city already, about 10 years worth of service to the city on 4 different city commissions, and then the wealth of experience that I bring in terms of on nonprofits and volunteerism that I've been involved with in the community, whether it's being on the board of the food co-op or being involved with Yolo Basin Foundation or a Yolo Mutual Housing Association, which builds affordable housing here in Yolo County. I've been very involved in a bunch of community organizations over the years, and I think that combination of volunteerism and community commitment plus the service to the city of Davis makes me qualified to serve on the city council.
Couple of follow-up questions.
Sure.
One is, what do you think of the housing controversy, the co-op housing controversy? You as a co-op person.
Sure.
What do you think of that issue?
Yeah.
And how the city's handled it?
I think so. I think the issue you're talking about is the DACHA issue, Davis
Correct.
Area Cooperative Housing Association. The model cooperative housing is wonderful, actually, and there are a lot of very successful cooperatives in Davis. Dos Pinos Housing Cooperative, Muir Commons Housing Cooperative, even N Street Housing Co-op. I mean, it's the way they've created that organization. There are a lot of very successful models in Davis that have been done. DACHA was not successful. I think that there are a variety of reasons for that. One is, I think, very specifically, it's hard to have a successful cooperative of any type if you're going to have a dispersed model. So they have, 5 houses here, and then another 10 houses a few blocks away, and then another so many houses, so many other blocks away. It's hard to create some sort of cohesion, if you're not all living near each other. I mean, even though you're in your own house, if you're so totally separate in all these different parts, it's very hard to have some sort of common ownership or feel like you're actually sort of a cohesive unit. So that's sort of one issue. I also think that, as with anything in life, there's usually two sides to everything, and so I think that there was probably an issue of, in this specific case, there's an issue where I think both the developer, as well as the city staff, there's some sort of responsibility in both quarters. I don't think that it's just sort of a one-sided affair. I think it's definitely, yeah.
And what prompted you to decide to run this year as opposed to 2 years from now?
Well, several things, but the first and foremost thing was my wife was very supportive of doing it now. Our personal circumstances over the past several years were such that Stacy, my wife, was in graduate school, working full-time and at graduate school down at Berkeley. And that was for the past 3 years, and so that was it was very difficult to, it takes a lot of effort and energy to run a campaign, but also serve on the city council, and it was just not quite the right time for, either of us. And so, but very specifically, in January of this year, a couple months ago, there was a 3-day period where there was a Tuesday night council meeting, city council meeting, which I was at and gave some public testimony on a couple of different issues. And then on the Wednesday night, Wednesday night was a planning commission meeting, and it was dealing with the Crown Castle neighborhood cell phone tower project that has been in the newspapers and such. And I was chairing that meeting, and that was a 5-hour-long meeting from 7 p.m. to midnight. And there were about 120 people there, all in opposition to that project. And then then the Thursday night, the following night, there was a fundraising event, Soup's On fundraising event, and I had attended that event and just saw all kinds of people who, and it was an event to raise money for foster care kids, and it was, in one night, $25,000 was raised just like that. For a very deserving nonprofit and for a very deserving cause. And it actually goes back to that notion of, that question earlier about the social safety net. I think that, frankly, as just citizens in general, but particularly as a politician, you have a responsibility to, help provide. If the government can't do it, then as a politician, you should be putting your time and energy and effort into actually helping provide funds for these local nonprofits and organizations in the community. But it was after those 3 consecutive evenings that my wife, Stacy, specifically came to me and said, I think I see you really have a passion for this. And if you want to run this year, I'm fully supportive. And that was really the impetus for it. So.
Do you have any questions for us?
Not really. I'm just appreciate the time, in this process. It's really great. I think particularly doing the video process is really a really positive thing too. So.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.